from the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop, all the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, your host, and we've done a number of shows lately on issue topics. We did education most recently, for example, but we are going back to what is truly our passion, which is, of course, Virginia politics. And we are going to talk tonight with Delegate Patrick Hope about what just happened, or probably more importantly, what actually didn't happen last week down in Richmond. They had a special session. But let me tell you a little bit about Delegate Hope. He is in the House of Delegates. He represents the 47th House District. He has been serving since 2010. He graduated from the Columbia School of Law in 2001, so he's a lawyer, which is helpful because he's on the Court of Justice Committee. He is also on the Health, Welfare, and Institutions Committee and the ever-favorite Misha Police and Public Safety, which appears to be where all the new Democrats go, because, boy, we love our guns and police. So thank you for coming, Patrick.
Great to be here.
I'm pleased that you're here. Now, there was a special session last week. Originally, it was supposed to be Medicaid, but then you all ended up doing budget as well.
We did. The budget forecast that came in showed that we have a shortfall of $2.4 billion. And so Governor McAuliffe and the Republicans in leadership, both House and Senate, were able to get together and strike a deal that's going to close that $2.4 billion. We took up that issue, but we also took up the Medicaid expansion issue, which really wasn't much of a debate.
Well, I didn't think it was, but let's talk about the budget for just a second, because K through 12 was spared, as I understand it, but everybody else got cut, right?
Right, that's right. We took most of it from, about half of it, I'd say, from the rainy day fund. Mm-hmm. The other half is going to be across the board cuts from agencies and higher education. Now, we will have an opportunity to come back in January to take a look again at where the cuts should come from. So there is some flexibility when we come back into session in 2015, and I want to use that opportunity to start looking at some of these corporate tax loopholes that we've been granting to a lot of corporations that really aren't doing what we think or intended that they would do.
Is that like the movie tax credit or something? I saw something at one point
that's
about
right.
those.
Movie tax credit. There's a yacht tax credit.
Whoa, back up. You mean I could be getting a tax credit? Well, if I bought a yacht, I could get a tax credit?
Yeah, that's right. For those people that purchase a yacht, there's a reduction in the sales tax for those individuals. And we need to take a good look at that and see if that really is encouraging people to buy yachts, or were these multimillionaires going to buy these yachts anyway?
Well, okay, so now I don't get this, because at least with the movie tax credit, you could sort of say if Hollywood comes here versus Baltimore or someplace, and films, you've got to feed them, you've got to house them someplace. There's some kind of a ripple effect out into the community, you hope, where they're filming. But is this because we have a lot of yacht builders in Virginia? Is that who we're supposed to be benefiting? Because I'm not understanding how my buying a yacht is going to create any kind of real ripple effect here.
No, it really isn't. I mean, this is by the recreation community that fought for this tax credit. Everyone has a lobby or an interest group, and they were successful. And so it's a tax break for a lot of millionaires. So we'll take a hard look at those tax credits to see if they actually do what they're intended to do. There's a coal tax credit as well. It's about $50 million a year, and it fluctuates from year to year, but that's about the average. We'll take a look at that, because that was put in on the promise that it would create more jobs. Mm-hmm. Question is whether it's actually creating these jobs. The coal is here in Virginia, and so the coal companies are already here, and so they're already trying to dig out the coal. Does it create more jobs? Most of the experts don't believe that it does. So we'll take a hard look at those tax credits and see just the ones that we need to keep and which ones that we can eliminate.
Well, that's going to be tough, because I do hear that the coal lobby is pretty strong. So taking $50 million away from that industry is going to be a challenge, I would think.
It is, but you know what? In an environment where we're cutting, everyone needs to sort of tighten their belts and take a good hard look at our budget, both on the revenue side and on the tax side.
Now, how does it work? I understand protecting the K through 12, because we've got a lot of schools in Virginia that suddenly are not accredited again.
Right.
But we have talked a lot, and I know that Governor McAuliffe made a point during his campaign of visiting every community college, for example. they're now going to be cutting. How are they supposed to make those kinds of cuts? Are they just supposed to pass on tuition increases, or what's the expectation here?
Well, that's likely what they'll do. I mean, they usually give it up to the universities and the community colleges to make those decisions. Community colleges got a lower cut than what the other public higher education universities did. So they'll be taking less of a hit. But nonetheless, it is a hit for our colleges, and we need to, they'll be coming up with their own ways to fill that gap.
Now let me ask you about, because I know you were on the show before, we were talking about mental health.
Yeah.
And because of the tragedy with Senator Creed Deeds and his family last November, more money was put into mental health. Was that funding protected, or is it going to be cut as well?
Yeah, that funding was protected. The only thing that was on the table was the cuts in higher education.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens with that. And the other thing that I thought when I read about the higher education thing, and then I saw an article this morning saying that this fellow who he's a senior vice president for health services at Virginia Commonwealth University, got a $250,000 bonus. And I thought, how about we start there? What is that about? I thought that was sort of extraordinary that you would have that as a performance bonus. It's not like just his whole salary. That's right. The bonus.
Yeah, no, and I certainly don't know the circumstances of that, but I think those universities will be taking a pretty hard look at how they spend their money.
Now there was an expectation, of course it was foiled immediately, that somehow this show of bipartisanship was a really good thing. Is bipartisanship only possible when you're finding yourself in a budget crunch where you sort of just say, all right, you guys take 3.3% of a cut, and you guys take 4% and come back and tell me what you're doing? I mean, what's the likelihood of bipartisanship continuing in any form? Because we know it didn't happen with Medicaid, which we'll get to. But
yeah, I mean, I think there's opportunities. We saw it a couple years ago with historic passage of transportation, and we put several $1 billion on the table for that to occur. So I think that there are opportunities when we really do have problems that need to be solved. I do think that people can come together. I mean, we've shown evidence of that. But Medicaid is a good example of there's just absolute resistance to coming together, even to have a conversation about it. But there are opportunities, and I'm the hopeful optimist that we will get to some solution.
All right, so let's talk about some solution in Medicaid, because that was supposed to be the reason for the special session. And I know some folks thought that you would be down there for multiple days, and I guess you got done in a day.
That's right.
So, and then there was this whole debate I saw in the paper saying, was this a fake debate? Was this just a charade? Was this just whatever? As the Republicans are saying, oh no, this is a full and fair hearing. What happened? What actually happened down there?
Well, Delegate Tom Russ from Fairfax put in a bill that was basically Marketplace Virginia. It had some other things in there that would restrict people's ability to get health care, but by and large it was driving 400,000 people into the marketplace, into the private insurance.
Now let me stop you there, because Marketplace Virginia, I thought that was a concept that got rejected in the last session.
It did. It did.
Okay, so Delegate Rust came back with the same kind of proposal?
It's a similar type proposal, and it had a block grant attached to it. So it had some other things attached to it that he felt would be attractive to Republicans. But the fact of the matter is the majority on the Republican side are not interested in compromising on this issue. And I think it's two things. There's philosophical differences between Republicans and Democrats on this. The first one is there's just this divide in expanding government. Republicans are opposed to expanding government in any form, and Medicaid is one area. The other thing is that Republican Party is very concerned about being criticized from the far ideological right of their party, and they're concerned about primaries and those kinds of things, and so they're being controlled by that aspect of their party. And so those two things together really did limit our ability to have what I believe is a fair and open debate. A fair and open debate would be going through regular order, going through the regular committee process. This went directly to the Rules Committee, and it only got 15 minutes. A $2 billion a year program, $20 billion over 10 years, only got 15 minutes in the Rules Committee. It wasn't a very fair and open debate. Only one person was able to testify in favor of the bill, and that was all the time that they had. The bill was shot back out to the floor and was rejected mostly along party lines. A couple of Republicans did vote in favor of it, but that was really it.
Well, I read something about it, and I wasn't quite sure what this meant, but that there was something about it died. People voted against engrossing it.
Right.
When people read that, what does that actually mean?
That's a procedural process that we usually, when a bill is passed out of committee, it usually sits for 3 days on the floor before it actually has a final vote. And what you need to do on the second day, and we waive the right to get to the second day, so we did get to the second day, and in the one day, a procedural motion was passed. But then you have to ask for it to be engrossed and passed on to its final reading. That failed, but that's basically a vote on the bill. So even though it didn't make engrossment, that's on passage. That's how some bills do die on the floor occasionally. It's rare, but that's how some bills do die, and that's what this one met its ultimate fate.
And it was along, except for those couple of Republicans, and I think there was one Democrat who voted.
One Democrat, Johnny Joanno from Portsmouth.
Okay, and what, as I understood Tom Rust's bill, it required people to, or it helped people buy insurance from their employers.
Well, for those that did have a job and that had that option, yes.
Okay, so was there some, because when I looked at that, I thought we were trying to get away from hooking your health care onto your employment status. So was there another piece to it, that if you were not employed?
Yes, there was. It would create a fund where all the money would come through the federal government, from the federal government. It would go into this fund, and people would be able to purchase health insurance, and they get the subsidy. So if your employer it currently offers it, but you just can't afford the premium, then it would allow you a subsidy to purchase it through your employer. And let's face it, that's where the majority of Virginians and Americans get their health care, is through their employer. But for those that are working poor, that just don't make nearly enough money to afford it on their own, and they fall within that between 0 and 133% of federal poverty, they would be given the subsidy through that fund to purchase health insurance through the private market.
Okay, well I missed that part, because I couldn't understand why we were continuing to make you have to stay in your job to get your health insurance. Well, we're going to talk some more about Medicaid, health insurance, and we're going to talk about ethics when we come back. So I'm hoping that everyone will stay with us. We will be back with Delegate Patrick Hope as soon as we listen to these important public service announcements.
I'm Eva Cohen, and I'm an oral cancer survivor. I didn't fit the profile. I didn't smoke or drink. I had no family history of cancer, no family history of cancer. I was 31 years old, 31 years old. I went to see my dentist about a sore in my mouth that wouldn't heal. It was oral cancer. I had to have a radical neck dissection and a portion of my tongue reconstructed. I didn't know if I was going to live or die.
I'm Surgeon General Richard Carmona. The survival rate for oral cancer is only 50%. Oral cancer can happen to anyone. If you have a sore or lesion in your mouth that doesn't heal within 2 weeks, see your dentist. Early detection is the key.
Early detection saves lives. I know.
1 in 8 Americans goes hungry. One idea helped change that. A community started a garden that blossomed into farmers markets. 1 in 6 children lives in poverty. One group of women found an answer by opening a daycare center that their neighbors could afford. Today, 36 million Americans live in poverty. But one by one, people are helping themselves and each other to change the picture of poverty to one of hope. For easy ways you can help, visit povertyusa.org.
2 words for you. Pop quiz. Ready? Name any funny movie. A drama. Name a mystery. And one more thing. Name the movie your kids saw today in science class.
Know what really matters. Know about your kid's school. And know about your kid. Find out 100 ways to know more, do more.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm your host, Bettina Lawton, and we are coming to you live from Merrifield, Virginia. And we have Delegate Patrick Hope with us tonight, and we're talking about the General Assembly special session that was very short. It was a very, very special session. I understand it cost the taxpayer somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 for pretty much nothing to get done, but that's okay. As long as we don't do that again, Patrick. So let me ask you, first of all, I want to read this quote because I saw you quoted in the paper and I thought it was a marvelous quote, and you're referring to Delegate Tom Rust. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking before the break, his was the only bill that got considered. It got shot down pretty much along party lines. But you said, I can feel the sharks starting to circle on his side. He's a lonely man. Yeah. I mean, that's really sort of gives you the picture of him out there. Why did he do this? And I will tell you, because I am a highly skeptical person, yeah, that Tom Rust had a very difficult election last year. Mm-hmm. And so part of me wonders is, did he put this bill out there to help his bona fides as a moderate because his district is moving against him now? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't want to judge his motivation, but I can tell you that since we've had this debate on Medicaid expansion, he has voted in favor of Medicaid expansion each and every time. Okay. And so he's certainly with us on the issue. And certainly that's probably because his constituency would benefit greatly from it. He sees the economics of it. He sees how important it is to get to this point. I don't know what his motivation are. I can't question that. I won't question that. But it's good that we have someone in the Republican Party that at least is trying to push this issue, mm-hmm, because it's very important. It's not just a moral one, it's an economic one as well.
Well, I was kind of surprised because there was, during the, I guess, August timeframe, there was this sort of tent hospital thing set up in Southwest in a parking lot. And all of these people who have no kind of health care at all, dental, vision, regular health care, were like standing in lines. They were coming from all over, standing in lines for these, clinics in a parking lot. Yeah. But their delegates were largely Republican, and they all voted against expanding Medicaid when their people are the ones who would benefit from that. And yeah, is there any way, I mean, the entire House of Delegates is up for election next year. Do you think that this reluctance of some of these delegates to vote in favor of it might come back to haunt them next year?
It's a fascinating look at our electorate and how they vote and what their philosophical beliefs are. You remember I said earlier in the show that philosophically Republicans are opposed to an expansion of government. That's what we're seeing there, and it's translating into, when you do poll after poll in that area, in that rural parts of the state, where you have upwards to nearly 20% of people that are uninsured that would benefit from this, their hospitals would benefit. They're opposed to the expansion of Medicaid. They're opposed to Obamacare. And I think it's been a messaging problem on our side, and we need a better job of talking about why it's important that we do this, that we're already paying for the health care in these areas. Hospitals are still seeing people that are sick, and they're really absorbing the costs. So we need to explain to the voters in Virginia why this is so important to do.
Well, I did see that something like $225 million of our budget shortfall could have been taken care of, because that's the amount that we're paying anyway for people to go to the emergency room and to use the emergency rooms as their primary source of health care, mm-hmm, which is incredibly inefficient to do.
Yeah, no, the economics are just so overwhelming here. And think of it this way: we're getting back $2 billion a year in economic benefit by doing this. It's $5 million a day of our taxpayer dollars are going to Washington, and they're not being redirected right here. Now, nothing is free, and so you know how the Affordable Care Act is working. In the first 3 years, it starts at 100% reimbursement, mm-hmm, and then slowly but surely it gradually goes down to 90% reimbursement. That 10% will cost the Commonwealth about $285 million a year. But to get back $2 billion a year, that's a pretty good rate of return.
Right. That does seem to be a no-brainer, but somehow we just can't seem to get there. Do you have any expectation, any hope that come January, when you guys go into the regular session, that there might be something different, a different dynamic, because it is an election?
I'd like to see it be sooner, and I think there are two windows here. One is right after the November election to come back, because I do think the Republicans, the ones that are very savvy and understand this issue, know that we have to do something to address this $2 billion problem. It's a big deal.
Well, and the only one, and I did see comments people were making saying, listen, you know, Tom West's plan certainly wasn't perfect, but it was a plan. Yeah. So what's your plan? Right. If you're not going to vote for this, what's your plan? What's this Medicaid Innovation and Reform Commission? That was put together. Seemed to me, I remember when it was initially, the people were initially appointed, the vast majority of the people on it are like ardent foes of expanding Medicaid. Right. Are they doing anything? I haven't seen anything saying they're having meetings or studies or whatever. What are they up to?
They do have meetings, and they hear reports from the administration. They call in people from outside groups to talk about how the Affordable Care Act is being implemented throughout Virginia. But you're right. The 5 people that were appointed by the Speaker on the House side were all ardently opposed to it. And so there's not any circumstance, any condition in which the MERC, is short for the commission, they would support an expansion of Medicaid.
Well, it all seems very difficult. But let me ask you, because you did do 2 things. I shouldn't say you did nothing. I mean, you did do the budget, so you did 3 things. And apparently you also, somewhat along party lines, passed a resolution to authorize the Speaker of the House to hire an attorney to sue the governor if he tries to expand Medicaid without the cooperation of the General Assembly. Yeah. So is there any dollar cap on that, or is this just willy-nilly? I mean, we just spent tens of millions of dollars on attorneys in former Governor McDonald's corruption trial. And now one man, the Speaker of the House, who's opposed to Medicaid expansion, can decide to hire a lawyer to fight against anything the governor does. Yeah.
No, and it's a resolution. This was done by design. It wasn't a bill, it wasn't a piece of legislation. It wasn't included in the budget because the governor wouldn't sign it. It wasn't part of any budget bill because the Senate would reject it. It was just a resolution, and it's just something really stating the sense of the House that should they have an opportunity to sue the governor for whatever reason, that they may, or the Attorney General, that they may defend themselves in court with that. So that it really was
so no money. This is a whole. If they could find somebody to contribute the bucks, in theory he could do this, but
yes,
there's no money in the budget.
It'd have to be within existing resources. That would not have been approved or signed into law.
All right, and so the other side of that, apparently he's really interested in hiring lawyers, because there was the other piece that said he could hire legal counsel to intervene in the ongoing litigation challenging Virginia's constitutional ban on gay marriage, which is kind of late in the day to do this. We're already lost the district level. We've lost at the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. We're waiting to see if the Supreme Court is going to take it or push us in with a bunch of the other appeal court cases.
Yeah, very late in the game. Will have no impact.
Good, because I was looking at that going, this is an enormous waste. It is so annoying to constantly be having these legal fees. Right. I mean, I'm a lawyer, you're a lawyer, we love legal fees. But seriously, it's my tax money. I don't want to go into these things. But I mentioned it, let's talk about it. Ethics. We sat through a horrendous trial. The throw your wife under the bus approach apparently did not work out well. The I'm going and living with my parish priest thing apparently didn't work very well for him. And we now have former Governor McDonald and his wife convicted of corruption charges. And then they get sentenced, ironically, I think the week before you will go back into session. Last year, there was what I consider to be a very, very weak ethics bill that passed. Is anything going to happen, or is the General Assembly going to get serious about ethics reform now that we have these convictions on the books?
Yeah, no, I think it's very clear that the public has lost its confidence in government. And there's a message that we need to get our house in order. Now, I've worked with the governor extensively. I like the governor, respect the governor. No one could ever condone the excesses that you saw that he used his office to receive. I think a lot of us are surprised by the verdict because, at least in our view, he didn't break any Virginia laws, but he broke federal laws. And I think we're getting a pretty clear message from the prosecution, from the jury, that we need to bring our laws, our ethics laws, in line with the federal government. And so what we did this past session is we take a look at the tangible gifts, the Rolex watch, and we put a cap and a limit on those types of gifts. But we did nothing about the intangibles, the concert tickets, the sporting events, and things like that.
I don't get how those are considered intangible. If you hand me a concert ticket, there is a price on it.
Sure.
I know what that price is. The prosecutors in former Governor McDonald's trial were able to put a value on the use of the vacation home, the use of the Ferrari, the use of all of these different things. So how could those not be considered real gifts? They're not really intangible.
No, I mean, they certainly are. They're not something that you can wear on your wrists or anything like that. They're not something that you can touch and feel. I mean, you can feel the ticket, but once it's redeemed, it's redeemed and it's over. So I think that we need to take a look at that. I think it's clear that those are gifts, and they should be subject to a cap, or they just should be strictly prohibited altogether. The other thing I'll say, and this is something that I'm going to push very hard during the session, is that if you look in cumulative, Johnny Williams stroked a $166,000 check to Governor McDonnell. If we say that you could no longer give any intangible or tangible gifts, what would prevent him or someone like him to write that check to your campaign account?
That's true.
And let me tell you something. If you write me a check for $160,000 to my campaign account, I'm the most popular kid on the playground because I can distribute that to my friends that are running in tough races and really get a lot of benefit from that.
Well, didn't you also buy new suits and shirts? Didn't I read in the last election that people were paying for their cleaners and
Yeah. So clearly we need to tighten these ethics rules. We need to make sure that we go across the board, we close every loophole. This clearly, our government is under a lot of scrutiny, and I think our citizens have lost confidence in our government, so we have to do something.
Well, we've got probably about 40 seconds left. So I want to, real quick, what are your top 3 priorities yourself on the legislation you want to see this come through?
Well, I'm chair of the Progressive Caucus, and so you'll see a lot of activity from the Progressive Caucus that I'll have a hand in on Medicaid expansion, certainly on income equality. We want to try to help the middle class in Virginia get a better place in the economy, but also I'll be doing a lot on prison reform issues. And I'll take a really hard look at some of the people that are getting felonies for nonviolent offenses, and maybe could they be better housed in the misdemeanor area and not spend their time in jail. And the last one is the death penalty. We need to do some things to curb that.
Well, that'll be something, because we do seem to like it. So I want to thank you so much for coming, and we will have you back during this session and see how you're doing.
Thank you.
Stay with us.
There's more than just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me. There's more than just books at the library.
Il n'y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. We have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton, and I'm your host. And we are switching guests, but we are staying with politics because next year in Virginia, we have the entire House of Delegates. So Patrick Hope, who was just here, he will be up for election next year, along with the other 99 people. The entire state Senate will be up as well, with 2 constitutional officers. We have a sheriff, we have a clerk of the court. We got another 2, but I can't remember what they are. I'm sure my guest is going to be able to tell us, however. And then in Fairfax, because we are just so lucky here, we also have a 9-member board of supervisors. We have our school board is up, so lots and lots of people are going to be running for election next year. And one of the things that I want to talk about, and one of the interests that I have, is women. And so who could we possibly have except Kate Hanley to come and talk to us about it. Right now, she is the chair of an organization called Emerge Virginia, but many of you probably know her as the former Commonwealth Secretary of the Commonwealth under Governor Kane. Governor Mark Warner had appointed her to the Commonwealth Transportation Board. She was for many years the chair of the Board of Supervisors in Fairfax County. She was the supervisor from the Providence District. She was on the school board in Providence District. She has done and seen everything you can possibly imagine in Virginia politics. And now we're going to talk about Emerge Virginia. So welcome, Kate. I'm glad you could come.
That's a lot of wases.
A lot of wases.
You forgot about the Soil and Water Conservation Board, which is also on the ballot.
Okay. Yes. I knew there was another one, and as I was
4 constitutional officers for Fairfax.
Okay. All right. So
different jurisdictions have different officers. Some have treasurers and commissioners of the revenue.
Oh, that's right.
You got to look at the ballot where you are, but it's a long one.
It's a very, very long one. And it gets, and then we inevitably will have some kind of resolutions or bonds or something that will come up next year that we've also got to.
Yes, so there's every now and then there's a constitutional amendment, and there are bond issues this year in Fairfax.
Right, and there's a constitutional amendment this year as well that people are going to have to take a look at. So I want to talk about women, though.
Okay, let's talk about women.
We have in Virginia, I counted them today. I went on and I looked at the General Assembly and said, we have 40 senators, only 7 of them are women, which is
I think you're giving my speech.
Am I giving your speech? Oh, well, then I should just stop giving your speech.
No, go ahead. Give my speech.
We have 16 out of 100 delegates. That's 16%.
I think it's actually 17 now.
No, see,
I brought the numbers.
But Rosalind Dance, I thought she got elected to the Senate. So I think maybe one more and one
we subtract one from there.
I couldn't quite figure that out.
Okay.
And then, ironically enough, we also have 7% of the women in Congress. So 17% seems to be the number.
The Pew Research organization has just come out. Let me read some numbers to you, because women in office, we have a number of different aspects of this. Women are 51% of the population. Men are, by definition, 49%. I'm good on that math stuff. But 75% of our candidates across the country are male. Women don't run for office for reasons that we're beginning to study. One of those reasons is that apparently we don't know when we're being asked. That women, if you say to a man, wow, you gave a good speech and you should be in office, they say, oh, okay, I'll run. but women don't know when they're being asked. And if I said, Bettina, you gave a great speech, you should be in office, you go, oh, thank you. And so we have a disconnect there. There are probably a number of other reasons as well, as the fact that they're working full-time several places. Mm-hmm. But women just don't get out there and run for office, and so that's one of the problems. The other one is, and let me read you all these statistics because I brought them along. All levels, 20% of our United States senators are women, 18% of the House members are women. At the state level, only 10% of the governors across the country are women, 24% of the state legislators. And in Virginia, it's only 18%, 17.9. So, and there was a new thing that just came out, it might have even been a study, last week that said after the midterms, it's going to be worse in Congress, because of who's predicted to win and who's running and all that kind of stuff. So the gender gap will even be wider.
Now, Do we have a problem with women feeling, okay, so they don't recognize when they're being asked?
That's right.
I recall many years ago that there were studies that would be done that said men, and in the business context, men, if you said, hey, I'm going to appoint you to be Secretary of the Commonwealth, a man, good, I'm great, let's do that. No idea what they do, no idea how he's going to get it done, but he figures he'll figure it out. As opposed to some women would be like, oh, gee, you know, I need to research that. I'm not quite sure what that is. And unless we feel that we are, you know, almost 100% qualified and know we are for something, that we don't do it. Is that still a dynamic that's
there are a number of dynamics. One of them is that look at Jeopardy and how many of those contestants are male. They more and more over the years they've gotten females on. But I'm an old school teacher, and I used to be the sponsor for the quiz bowl. Mm-hmm. And in class you'll discover that men will push that button and then figure out the answer. Women will wait until they know the answer, and by that time it's too late to push the button. So we like this to be sure. We like the security of knowing what we're talking about.
Oh my God, which would really make us terrible politicians if we have to know what we're talking
I'm not going to say that. I've run for office too many times.
You've run for two. That's true. That's true.
But it is a problem, and the rules for women running for office are different. You just have to be a little. The campaigns have to be a little different.
What do you mean they have to
be a little different? Well, we rarely see stories about men's candidacies on the front page of the style section. I spent a lifetime trying to stay off the front page of the style section. We rarely talk about men's hair or whether or not those of us that are gray should in fact dye it. Those rules are different, and the rules are different when people have small children and run for an office that's going to take them, for example, to Richmond. Mm-hmm. They're always asked, who's going to take care of your children while you're gone? And I'm not sure we ever ask the male that same question. The words we use are different. Women are bright, men are smart. Men are aggressive, women are, and I don't think I can say what
we are.
Yes.
It rhymes with which to quote
we might be shrill or something else. So the dynamics of how you campaign are just a little bit different.
Has that improved at all?
A little bit, yes. In Northern Virginia, we're pretty lucky because Northern Virginians have elected women to the local government for a long time, and to the General Assembly and the State Senate. Part of that is because this is recently discovered that this is the area where women are most successful in their jobs. They make the highest wages. Part of that's the government, because of course the Civil Rights Act of 1964 made discriminating against gender illegal, as well as a lot of other things. Right. So the government's supposed to follow the law. So in this area, one time I knocked on the door of my first race. It just said Hanley for supervisor, and I knocked on a door, and a little lady said, "Oh, you're a woman." And I said, "Is that a good thing?" She was much older than I am now, and she'd been voting for a long time. She may have been a first voter in 1920 or whatever it was. And she said, "Oh, yes, it is." So the next signs came out with Kate Hanley on it. So it's been a good thing in Northern Virginia, but that's not necessarily true across Virginia and across the country.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's talk a little bit about Merge Virginia, because we've there are obviously issues.
Yep.
There used to be an organization called the Farm Team. Mm-hmm. And then, which didn't, they raised some money and did some kind of a newsletter thing.
It was a PAC. The Farm Team was organized, was born in 2008. And it was a PAC that looked for women to run for office and raised money to contribute money to women candidates, endorsed women. Merge Virginia is something entirely different. For many of the same reasons. One of the things stories that I like to tell is I am an old school teacher, and I taught high school, and I figured out that I could teach the older kids American history and they would learn it, but if I wanted to intervene in their long-term education, I really needed to be teaching at the preschool or first grade level. And what Emerge is doing is the same thing for women candidates. We're not talking about their candidacies after they've announced and are running in the middle of the campaign and have called and said help. We're talking about what it means to run for office before that. We have two different kinds of classes going on, but the long-term one, the one that starts in January and goes through July, is to help women think about if they think they want to run for office, at what level that might be, because we're talking about Soil and Water Conservation Board and School Board and General Assembly and members of the governing bodies, councils and boards of supervisors, all of that, to help build the bench.
Now, how is that different, for example, from the Sorensen Institute? I always hear a lot of candidates say, oh, I'm a graduate of Sorensen. So what are you guys doing that Sorensen doesn't, or vice versa?
And I'm on the Northern Virginia Sorensen Board. The Sorensen Institute has been established to talk about issues particularly, and to help people know all Virginia. You know, they meet in different parts of Virginia to learn about what Virginia does and the variety, and then there's a lot of it in Virginia. And they talk about issues facing Virginians as well as the political process once you get elected. We're working to talk about what, if you think you want to run for office, what do you want to run for? What you need to do in order to do that? Do you really want to do that? Because I think we've all seen sometimes that there are people that end up running for office that if they'd have known then what they knew now, they might not have done it. So we're purely the political campaigning process and what you need to do that. You know, a lot of people have asked me, Kate, how'd you get involved in politics? And I usually say, I didn't get involved in politics, I got involved in community. And so when you get involved in community, how that translates into politics. On the other side of that, if you want to be in politics, you need to be involved in community in order to be an effective elected official.
It also gives you that ephemeral base that people always talk about. If you're not involved in your community, you're just relying on whoever the party regulars are, and that may not be enough, particularly in other parts of the state if you're Democrats.
Well, and you need to prove to the electorate that you have some experience doing something that affects the community, I believe. That's not always the case. I hear music.
You hear music, which means we are going to go to a break, and then we're going to come back because we're going to talk some more about Emerge Virginia and what they're doing, what are they teaching. Kate referenced a long program, the January to July. If you can't do that, we got something else you might be able to do.
Absolutely.
So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Osama bin Laden calls getting nuclear weapons a religious duty.
Today, materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain-link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them.
Why did we learn all this?
My mother.
My son.
My sister-in-law.
Were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can.
Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember what that flag waving stands for.
One nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice
for all. In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America. Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate.
Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list. Because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back to Inside Scoop Virginia. We are talking politics. We're particularly talking women in politics with Kate Hanley. She is the chair of Merge Virginia, and they just graduated their very first class, and we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to get a broader sense of what Emerge is, because there's Emerge Virginia, but there are a bunch of other emerges.
Oh, there are a lot of Emerge.
Okay.
No, Emerge America is the umbrella organization established first in California in 2002. There are 14 state affiliates, 14 states now where there are Merge programs. We train Democratic women to run for office. We're one of the newer states. We just graduated our first class, and I guess there are about 3 new ones, and we were established in 2013. So it is a burgeoning nationwide effort. We are not a PAC. We don't endorse. We don't contribute to women in campaign dollars. We're all about the front end training and then mentoring, and there are alums across the country. There are, I believe, 241 alums running for office this year. Merge Virginia likes to say that I think that it's 40-some%, let me find this number, of the women have run for office, and 70% of the number of the women that have run have won. So we have a certain track record of running for office. One of the things that we did with the last class here in Virginia is they applied to be appointed to boards and commissions. So it's not just about elected office. If you decide you don't want to do that, it's also about serving in other ways.
And is that what you meant before the break? You said, you know, some people get into running for elected office and then realize, oh, I shouldn't have done this. That there are other ways of serving like these boards and commissions.
And we want people to understand that there are other ways to serve, but we also want to understand that running for office is a very public, non-private kind of thing that you do, and you have to be prepared to do that. And these are some of the implications for doing that. And because you really should, if you're going to run, you should enjoy it and have some enthusiasm about it. It's not a prison sentence. You volunteered, so it's something that you want to be doing.
You should be wanting to do it. So you've now got something coming up that's shorter. Because that was a very long.
That was a 7-month program, and we talk about everything. We talk about how to, in a long program, we're not just about the campaign, but what areas you might want to work in, and what offices you might think you might want to serve in. And the things like campaign organization and fundraising and media and social media and developing your message and all those kinds of things that you need to know. We had 21 members of that class. That was our first class, a wonderfully diverse class, graduated in July, and from all over the state. And they are now part of our alumni network, which is a nationwide network. I keep running into people in Virginia who are Merge graduates from other places, and that's a good thing. And we continue to keep those, keep those folks informed and together, and do some mentoring with them. But this is Virginia. And unlike everybody else except New Jersey, we have an election every year. And so it dawned on us that for those particularly local and state offices that are going to be on the ballot next year, next November. Of course, there's some town and city councils that are elected in May, that they could be taking the course January to July and running for office. So we said, okay, let's do a 2.5-day boot camp training for the intense organization, media, voter contact, direct mail targeting, all those kinds of things that we stretch out. Let's do it intensively. And we're going to do that for people who will be on the ballot in 2015. So we have a number of people taking that class. That's going to be over Columbus Day, that weekend, that holiday. We have a number of people taking that class who are already serving in an office, but maybe wanting to run for a different office.
Wasn't it sort of the same? I mean, if you had enough skills and organization and knowledge and whatever to get yourself elected one, shouldn't that just carry over the other? Or is it really that different?
Apparently, no, it doesn't always. If you just got into it once and don't quite know how you got there, you may want to
There
know.
is that.
Exactly.
All of a sudden you found out you won and you're like, wow, how did I do that?
That's the whole speech of campaigning is different than governing. That's another show. But if there was a special election where you didn't have time to plan and think ahead, or a particularly short-term election where you don't have to raise the amount of money, or you don't have the long-term media kinds of efforts that you do in regular elections.
Well, we're going to have that up here because we've got the race in the congressional district with 2 incumbents. So whoever wins, that's a vacant seat. That's a special election.
And I've won 2 specials out of my 6. So a special election, I love them because they're very compressed and short, but they're a very different thing than a long-term election. And so they want to. They want to see about what it means to run a different kind of race. I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's going to be interesting. Some of the other states do boot camps, but not all of them.
So where is this boot camp going to be?
In Charlottesville.
Okay.
In Charlottesville, centrally located, hopefully.
Now, can people still sign up?
Well, if you've already filed and didn't know about this, if you'll contact us on the website at www.emergevirginia.org, there might still be a space. The deadline has passed, but
if you've already filed, this is it. You need to be in this class.
If you want our help,
convince somebody out there to say, please let me in.
All the money that we raise goes to training. We do have 1 employee of Emerge Virginia, somebody who's our executive director. That's it. The board is a volunteer board. There are 17 of us, including the First Lady of Virginia, who was on the board before she was First Lady. And so we're an all-volunteer effort. Again, we don't endorse. So if people are going to be on the ballot, if Democratic women are going to be on the ballot and want to be trained, then we're glad to have your application.
So, in October, so Columbus Week in October.
Yeah.
You said that these women will all have filed?
No, some of them have.
Oh, okay.
Some of them have not. Some of them are not entirely sure that there's a vacancy in the seat they want to run for yet, but it is next year. And so they can't wait and go through the process. If you're just sort of thinking about you might want to run for office in the future, the long program is a much better fit for you because in the first place it won't be so compressed, but in this it's future oriented as well. Here's some choices. It gives us time to talk about I guess, more philosophical things than here's what you absolutely have to do. One of the things we discovered in the first class, who knew, that completely people seem to not know about, by the way, is filing and what the process of filing is and what you have to do and all those things and the form shift of. So that's going to be our first effort because most of these women have not filed.
Well, and if you don't get it right, you're out of the box.
Exactly.
There's I remember a number of controversies of people who didn't have enough signatures and
all that stuff.
All that good stuff.
So those kinds of things that you don't think about. Fundraising is also, women are not generally very good fundraisers. And so we encourage, we spend some time having people call their friends and family. One of the things we discovered in the last class, show you how old I am, is that we were going to have women make phone calls. And I had just gotten there, I don't sit in on all of these. And some of them said, oh, no, we only talk by text. And so they raised funds from texting. And I thought, I've learned something today.
That's interesting. No, I have not gotten any texts. I get an enormous amount of email fundraising.
Yes.
And I do think there is a question as to how effective that's going to continue to be, because
it always
so
changes.
many people are just, you see it and you delete it. Because every 2 hours, somebody sends me another request for money, and it's like,
well, you remember, that's relatively new. You remember that we proved that you could raise money online. First, John Kerry in 2004, and the tsunami. Remember the tsunami, I guess, was in December of 2003 or 2004. I've kind of forgotten, a long time ago. And that was sort of the first time that everybody really saw how much money could be raised that way and that it was worth doing. And so now we've gotten to the pinnacle. It'll be interesting if we go downhill with that.
So what's the difference? I mean, on your website, there's a big long list of things, including ethical leadership, which I thought was interesting, that you cover on your regular program. Are there certain pieces of the curriculum that you're not going to do because of the intense
the more
nature?
Abstract kinds of things? We're always going to talk about ethics, and to the point that if it's nothing but to say Shakespeare was right, who steals your purse steals trash, who steals your good name takes everything. I'm sorry to the English teachers out there if I butchered that, but it will be more concrete, more of the hows of how you actually go about doing it, and again, the media training, the interviews, all the things that we're doing now. You can have them all come on and interview them all.
I would love to have them all come on and interview them, and certainly if they run, because I did that a year or two ago with the House of Delegates and had people coming in from Skype. You really should, on the media training, by the way, specifically train on Skype. Because what I saw when we would have people come on Skype is some of them had no clue about things like you do not do it next to the window, next to the train tracks. And I actually had someone on, and could hear the trains.
And please turn your radio down.
Yes. And it's kind of like, and make sure that the angle, because everybody's doing it off of the cameras, in their laptops, make sure the angle is right so that we're not looking up your nose. I mean, it's very difficult for people to understand that it's not like talking to your kids.
No.
True. On Skype, true. It's just you and your kids. Who cares?
And there's and how you work with social media, how to make it beneficial and not overshare, is also an interesting balance.
And when do you need to respond, or when do you just need to say, I don't need comments, I don't need to get.
It's a lot different now for people to have to respond to the onslaught of kind of communication they get, both as candidates and as elected officials. When somebody is just railing at you and then you've responded once and they just keep railing, sometimes you can just save those up and respond every now and then, because you're really probably not going to change their mind, but they feel better shouting at you on paper or on electronically.
Well, and they still shout at you in general public. So
yes.
We've got about 10 seconds left. What do you want to say to the women?
All those women out there who are interested in running for office, look at our website, which is emergevirginia.org, emergeva.org, and see what kinds of things we're doing. And if you're interested in running for office in the future, sign up, apply for the class, which will start in January.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Kate.
I'm always glad to be here.
Emerge Virginia is a great opportunity to build the bench, both with Democrats and particularly with women. So we will keep track of what's going on with you guys.
Thank you. I'm always glad to talk about it.